It's really a privilege for me to have this opportunity to say a few words at the opening of this extremely important conference for WIPO, extremely important conference that is being held essentially on value creation and value addition. First of all, let me apologise for my physical absence from this meeting. It was, of course, my plan and intention to be present in Zimbabwe, in Harare. I thank the government of Zimbabwe for its very kind and warm invitation for me to be present. I'm afraid that a certain number of personal commitments that I had, rather than professional commitments, prevented me from coming at the last moment. So I'm really very deeply disappointed that I'm not present with you. As you are all aware, we are living in a world where significant disruption, mainly caused by technology, is occurring. And it's affecting all economies. And the question, of course, for African countries, the very diverse continent of Africa, the question is how to situate the economy in this extremely volatile context where technology is changing literally the way in which we organize the creation, the production, the distribution of goods and services. At the center of this, of course, is finding the key to the secret of value creation. There are a number of great advantages, as you all know better than I, that Africa has. It has a young population. It has a population that is increasing. I think the UN population statistics suggest that in the next 30 years, the population on the continent of Africa will double. And when we look at that population, over 60% of the population is under the age of 25. The continent of Africa is also extremely rich in natural resources. How do we put those two factors together? The dynamic and young population, together with the extraordinary richness of resources, so as to ensure that actually value is created out of these in a way that is sustainable and durable, and which gives to the young population the opportunity of employment. When one looks around the world now, we see that, of course, there is a transition, and a transition from value creation being based on physical assets, such as resources, primary resources, to value creation being based on intangible assets, the intellectual contribution that is made to the production and distribution of goods and services. You can see that in many, many indicators. Of course, one is comparing the 10 largest corporations in the world now and 30 years ago. 30 years ago, it was dominated by those concerned with the physical economy and hydrocarbons, for example. Now, it's those concerned with the digital economy. What is the basis of wealth creation in this new digital economy? Well, I think the basis is, of course, the ideas, the innovation, and the creativity that come from human beings. And so this is an opportunity for that greatest asset of Africa to come to the fore. While there are opportunities, of course, there are also dangers and perils. And the greatest danger, I believe, is being left out. That the speed of change is so rapid that one finds oneself in a position of being unable to cope. Here, I think what we see is that technology is changing the rules of the game. I give the example of advanced manufacturing. Throughout the 1990s and the early 2000s, we saw global value chains constructed on the basis of the use of technology together with low-cost labour centres in order to produce goods and services that were distributed right around the world. Well, the use of low-cost labour centres for manufacturing is put at risk by advanced manufacturing, robotics, sensors, and all the other techniques, and artificial intelligence. It's no longer necessary for a corporation based, for example, in Germany, manufacturing footwear, to go to a country, for example, in Asia, where it has the physical manufacturing take place, because this will be done by robotics. So the rules of the games are changing, and this is a great challenge in situating oneself. So what can intellectual property and WIPO do about this? Well, the first thing that we believe is important is for a country to have a strategy in which it confronts these fundamental challenges and looks at the basis of its economic production and sees how intellectual property, that is innovation and creativity, can assist in moving the economy forward in the positive direction that the government wishes. We have worked with well over 30 countries in Africa on the development of national IP strategies and plans, and we believe this is extremely important. Then secondly, I think what is extremely fundamental is the construction of pertinent technological capacity within a country. Now, the difficulty here is that this is a very long-term process. It's a very long-term process. Let's look at the countries that have done this in a very short period of time, such as the Republic of Korea, Japan in the 1950s, the 1960s, the 1970s, China more recently, Singapore. These countries all did it across a period of 30 to 40 years. It's not something that can be achieved overnight. It involves using all of those in the direction of the strategy that has been set for the country by the highest authorities in terms of the economy, industry, and innovation and intellectual property. I think a very important element, if I may say, and learning from the success of those countries that have done this in a relatively short period of time, is that there be a high-level policy focus on this area. Now, we welcome in particular the presence of so many ministers at this important meeting for this very reason, to inscribe innovation and the construction of pertinent technological capacity high in the government agenda. I think one other element, if I may say, that is extremely important is the establishment of some sort of system whereby the wealth generated by physical resources, a part of it is reinvested in the innovation and technology and intellectual capital economy. So if all the wealth generated from physical resources is simply dissipated or spent in physical resources, the advancement of the economy in terms of its technological capacity will suffer. There are countries that have done this. Norway is a salient example, taking a part of its royalties from its oil revenues and ensuring a sovereign wealth fund for various purposes in the economy. There are a number of African countries that are looking at this. There are a number of Latin American countries that are looking at this as well. I think this is an extremely important element, being able to transfer some of the wealth generated from the physical economy and the physical resources, primary resources, into the intellectual capital economy of the future. We believe also at WIPO that capacity building is extremely important, and for this reason we have an academy, we have many programs. My colleagues in the African Bureau who are with you are all very conscious of this, and designing the courses in such a way that they feed into the national strategies that are established. So, Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, the task is a huge one, frankly, and it's a huge one for any economy, no matter what stage they are, either the retention of competitiveness if you're an advanced economy, or the acquisition of competitiveness if you're a developing economy. In a highly volatile, highly changing world in which technology is increasingly shaping the form of society and the economy, whether we like it or not. And For that reason, intellectual property has become a central element in the economy, and we see that on a daily basis. It's not only a central element in the economy, but of competitiveness of individual enterprises, and also, of course, in consequence of trade tensions. So, intellectual property is important, building the capacity to use it for the particular circumstances of each of the 54 very diverse countries in Africa is extremely important, and creating value for Africa. This, I think, ultimately is the task and the challenge. I wish you a very, very successful meeting. Again, my profound apologies that I'm not physically with you. My warmest greetings to the government of Zimbabwe, and my deep thanks to them for their very kind invitation. We have excellent cooperation with the government of Zimbabwe, and I'd like to acknowledge their ever constant and constructive support for an engagement in the organisation. I wish our two colleagues, the Directors General of OAPI and ARIPO, extraordinarily good institutions, all the best with this conference. The tripartite agreement between OAPI, ARIPO and WIPO was a milestone in the development of the international cooperation at the World Intellectual Property Organization. This promises to give much greater coherence and much greater coverage to intellectual property under the very able leadership of Fernando dos Santos and Denis Bouzou. Je n'ai pas parlé en français, je suis désolé, j'ai plutôt utilisé l'anglais, mais j'aimerais quand même vous souhaiter une belle réussite à cette conférence et une bonne continuation de la coopération profonde entre l'Organisation mondiale de la propriété intellectuelle, l'OAPI, l'ARIPO et tous les pays africains. Merci beaucoup.